back today with another video. Today we're going to be taking a step away from the casual stuff. We're going to be focusing back on the competitive stuff, so we're doing another Dirty Spike video. This is focusing on SurgeKu, Turning the Tide, of course. It's a card that's I've talked about a lot. I know us in our group think that the card is grossly overpowered and in the right strategy has the potential to be something that's completely game warping. And the reason why is because critical deflect cost 7. When you play this card, choose all cards in your opponent's hand and their battle cards in their drop area as well as your hand and shuffle them into your deck. So you both will be at 0 cards in hand when you play this card. It also has deflect, so it's going to go off no matter what. The effect always works. And at first we paired this with stuff like Piccolo Surge. We paired it with Hirudegarn, and the biggest reason for doing that, or testing the strategies like that, is to honestly see if the card had merit. If you were testing and you get to turn 7 and you play Android 17 Turning the Tide, how often are you winning the game? And honestly, the answer was a large percentage of the time. It's very hard to lose when you play the card, because whether if you have a high life total and your opponent doesn't, or you just are able to wipe away other resources and then have a board presence on board, you're usually able to take them from 4-0 or 3-0 with ease. So testing with Hirudegarn and seeing how good it was, just made me wonder, like, what happens if we just juiced it up with just the best battle cards in the game, with Grade 8, Bardock, Ridder's Warcry, Bergamo, Ferocious Roar as well, and then also just keeping the interaction of Zamasu's super combo into Bojack to create just like almost like this impenetrable fortress that you have for defense. And honestly, just putting all of it together and merging all the shells and thinking about how this deck just generates so many 2-for-1s and X-for-1s for yourself against the opponent, while you're just generating that advantage across the course of the game and then eventually running over them completely with your board presence plus you're turning the tide. It honestly is like a match made in heaven. Couple things to note. Secret rare, we're still playing Dragon Ball's Negative Energy Overflow. I know people are like, why are you still playing that card? Why aren't you playing one of the other busted secret rares? Why aren't you playing Vegito? Why aren't you playing this? And honestly, Dragon Ball's Negative Energy Overflow is just such a great card right now, because being able to blow up, even though it's dual-sided, but being able to blow up the entire field, start from scratch, and be able to get rid of your opponent's resources, having an answer to decks that are playing, the Universe 9 stuff, just having that catch-all is just so powerful. And I really think we're going to get to a space where the card sees more play. And if you haven't picked up your copy yet, you need to pick it up now. It's incredibly cheap, and the card is just grossly powerful. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Our extra cards, we're playing 1 Dragon Ball's Negative Energy Overflow, we're playing 4 Senzu Bean, we're playing 2 Frost Deadly Poison in the main deck. Very simple, very straightforward. We're playing a counter suite. We're playing 2 Chomp of the Trickster, 2 Jean and Martine, Universe 12 Destroying Angel. The reason why Jean and Martine are in the main deck over Hit Deadly Vanguard is we want to make sure that we have enough blue-yellow sources to be consistent with our Beer's Fickle God charges. So in game 1, we're trying to be as consistent as possible with energy, so that's why it's getting to play over Hit Deadly Vanguard. And the Aegis ability just enables a deck more. Just being able to discard a dual-color card to then free up a Raider's Warcry or a Bergamo is just really worthwhile in your main deck strategy. And then, of course, you can pivot in your game 2, game 3 based on the matchup itself. We're playing 4 Beer's Fickle God. It's our check land. That's why we play it. We're playing 4 Bojack, Resident Agent of Destruction. The more I continue to play these blue-yellow based strategies and the more I just continue to test, Bojack having blocker, milling a card, and then tapping one of the opponent's battle cards is just such a highly impactful effect in so many games. And blocker is just a keyword that doesn't get enough respect, and honestly, it's one of the best keywords in the game right now. It's one of the best ways to get around these overpowered cards is just by having a blocker in play. So Bojack is a card that I've just been in love with throughout duration of testing through Series 9.5. For Zamasu Super Combo, I wholeheartedly believe it's the best super combo in the game. Talking about the theory of X-for-1s is something we do a lot, and I think Zamasu just being able to force your opponent to have to structure their turns differently when it comes to attacking, forcing the opponent in a situation where they might walk into something that they don't want to, and then of course its ability to enable both Bojack and both Bergamo Ferocious Roar just leads to some games where your opponent never even gets to play. They'll try and play some battle cards, they miss sequence one time, you punish them with Zamasu and to Bergamo, and then boom, your opponent's tapped out for the turn, and then you get to keep going about your day, which is honestly, your game plan is just to live until the 7th turn of the game. and Zamasu and Bergamo just ensure that that happens. It's also great if it's the turn before you're about to go off, even in post-sideboarded games. Say your opponent gets a little greedy, you can Zamasu, go into Bergamo, tap them out, they then can't play their Jiren. So just a match made in heaven having those two cards together, and of course Zamasu into Bojack. Incredibly powerful. Being able to tap something with Zamasu, play the Bojack, tap something, and then have a blocker means you're not going to be taking damage. For our red card package, we're playing a total of 12. We're playing 4 Topo Righteous Aid, 4 SS Vegeta Exploiting Weakness, 2 Broly Crown of Retribution, and 2 Hidden Power Iskai. Hidden Power Iskai just enables your leader to be a win condition. So playing that in the deck just makes tons of sense because your leader also is a critical threat on its Awakened side. Playing 2 Broly Crown of Retribution, this is just going to be our Thoughtseize effect. If our opponent, we're playing a passive opponent, we want to be able to punish them for leaving energy up, we can play a Broly. We're playing 4 Exploited Weakness because we need a sweeper, and we don't want to play the Kaioken because main reason why is double red is not something we're going to have early in the game, so that ability doesn't really work, and then we prefer counterplay as opposed to playing a card raw. So that's why we're playing Exploiting Weakness instead of playing Kaioken. And then, of course, Topo. It's a solid negate. I think that the card has gotten a lot worse now with cards like Kakunsa, Zamasu being released that just end up being better 2-for-1s, whereas Zamasu, you kind of 2-for-1 yourself sometimes. But either way, Topo is just a great way to make sure that against decks like Majin Buu, which is still really popular, you can kind of shut down their turns if they figure it down to, less than 2 cards in hand. Other thing to think about now is just, our yellow cards, mono yellow cards, 4 Great Ape, Son Goku, Saiyan Instincts, 4 Raiders Roar Cry, 4 Bergamo. To be honest, this is going to be something that you're going to honestly see for a really long time. If you're playing a yellow-based strategy and you aren't playing with these 12 cards starting in your list, you're probably doing it wrong. Honestly, you're 16 cards if you include Zamasu Super Combo. I think that 16 card package alone is just the makings of whatever the best deck in the format is. So whether if that's Jiren with Doggos or that's SurgeKu, I think that 4 Zamasu Super Combo with Son, Goku, Saiyan Instincts, Raiders Roar Cry, and Bergamo just makes up the core of what the best deck in the game looks like. So that is our key there. And then, of course, our win condition, Android 17, Turning the Tide. Something I noticed just about the format itself, games tend to go long. Even when you talk about the SurgeKu mirrors, even the more popular SurgeKu decks that are out there right now, they don't have surefire win conditions. And so now introducing one, letting the game go long, introducing that surefire win condition is going to be how you gain the edge in this format. Games are grindy. Games go a long time. And if you're not playing towards something, you just end up playing a lot of weird games where they just go long and then it just becomes a battle of resources, which you don't need to play that game. Game 1, you can, if you have a dedicated win condition that you can just get to in game 1, steal game 1 with your dedicated win condition, and then game 2 and 3 pivot to a different type of game plan, then that's where you want to be in this format. I right now, there's 2 places I want to be, and that's either playing a deck that's winning the game within turns 3 through 5, or that's a deck with a surefire win condition on turns 6, 7, 8, and beyond. And I feel like Turning the Tide is the best win condition in game 1 right now. So this here is the 50 card main deck. Next thing I want to go over is just sideboard considerations. We can take a look at what I'm playing right now. Right now it's 2 Time Magic. It's 2 Jiren Survival of the Fittest, of course, for any sort of mirror matches that we may have. It's 2 Cooler, Swift Retaliation Cooler. This is honestly, when you have to switch up game plans because you know what your opponent's going to be bringing in against you, or you just know that you need to play a faster game, Swift Retaliation Cooler is just going to be that card that shuts down your opponent's ability to just kind of blow you out with counters. It's also great against decks like Invoker that try to use Sleepy Boy technique. Just really great way to produce blowouts, which is what you want. Playing 2 Obuni. Again, we're playing games where we need to be the beatdown. You need to start introducing cards that allow you to switch from the control role to the aggressive role. So we're playing 2 Obuni. We're also playing 2 Chilled the Cruel. Card just goes great in this strategy since we're playing tap effects. You could either play them in the main deck if you wanted to, but as of right now, since I'm mostly focusing on being the control in game one, Chill the Cruel is a sideboard consideration at the moment. The next consideration is if you're playing a SurgeKu mirror, or any game where you're expecting to play against your opponent that's playing a lot of 5 or less that don't have barrier, then Hit Deadly Vanguard is going to come in. Most of the time, it's going to come in over Gina Martine. Like I said, game 1 you want to have Gina Martine for the consistency of your blue-yellow energy, and it just helps enables your most busted potential turns because you going to a Raiders Roar Cry when your opponent doesn't expect it, or going into a Bergamo when they don't expect it to tap them out is just very important. We're playing Restrain. This is just to have a negate that you pick up utility within your drop area because your leader just allows you to, and then it's also great if you're ever going to play against a hand, destruction strategy and they're trying to go for game, or even if you're playing against, you know, Gogeta Hero Revived and you don't see your Jiren, or you're playing against, you know, Turning the Tide, same thing. You know, you take a damage and then you are able to use one of the cards you take from damage and then put it in the drop area, use Restrain, or same thing with Hero Revived, same game plan. So playing Restrain is a really good thing to do as well. One Fu Shrouded in Mystery, just when we need to switch up game plans and have the extra win condition. And then, of course, the third Burly Crown Retribution. Honestly, if you're playing against somebody and you expect them to bring in Jiren game 2 and game 3 and you want to stick with the Turning the Tide strategy, it's always really good to just add in the extra Burly Crown, cutting a Hidden Power Isekai, or cutting an Exploiting Weakness. And then you have the additional way to be able to disrupt the opponent. So that's something I always like to do too. Just being able to switch that up. So you just have the 1 energy, take your opponent's card before the turn you go off, or wait till you're at turn 8. Wait till the game is already at turn 8. Have another red, play Burly Crown Retribution, see if your opponent tries to counter it. If they do, more often than not, they're not going to have the energy to deal with it. So then you play the Burly Crown, you steal the card, play your Andrew 17, Turning the Tide, and then just easy, game's over. So that's why we play the third copy in the sideboard. Other sideboard considerations, like I said, you more often than not, when you want to bring in Hit Deadly Vanguard, you're going to be taking out your Gina Martine. It's just going to be the thing that, like I said, if you're playing against decks that produce, you know, multiple threats for little energy, like Raiders War Cries, or you're playing against Jiren or anything like that, you're going to want to play the Hit Deadly Vanguards instead of the Gina the Martine, unless you're playing against Jiren that's using Doggos, because if they tap you out, you want to be able to have something that allows you to get that energy back, since we don't have access to Dimension Magic. When you bring in a Retaliation Cooler, usually that means you're the beatdown. So you're going to take out your Chomp of the Tricksters, and that's when you would bring in your Swift Retaliation Coolers. Whenever you're playing against a deck where you're worried about being able to stop damage, or like a really big threat, like bringing in Time Magic is really helpful. I usually recommend either cutting 1 Bean, cutting 1 Frost Deadly Poison, or cutting 2 of one of the copies which you don't need, or cutting Beerus Fickle God, since you don't need to play that many check lands. Jiren Survival of the Fittest is just going to come out for whatever counterplay slot you don't think you're going to be using in that matchup. And then Obuni is just going to be your blue threat that can come in as well when you think Turning the Tide is less relevant. So you can do something like cut a Turning the Tide, cutting a Beerus, and then putting in your 2 Obuni. So then now you have more diversity for your threats, which that's always really important, is just making sure that in those matchups where you know your opponent's playing a lot of counters too, and you're the person that's supposed to be more proactive, then you want to kind of diversify the threats you have, so it makes it difficult for your opponent to play around, or to think about. And then of course just having Deflect as well, being able to get those tokens just allows you to take an aggressive stance like really easily. So I like that as well. And then of course, talking about Chilled the Cruel, it depends on if you are the beatdown like we talked about, you can cut either the Chomp of the Tricksters, the Gene the Martines, or the Frost Deadly Poisons to put in your 2 Chilled the Cruels. Just again, trying to establish more threats for yourself. But in general, I think this is a really good place to start if you're looking for a full 65 to play. I'll make sure to put the deck list down in the description below through Shinron's Lair. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for all the support you've been giving us through Twitch, through the Patreon, through the YouTube channel in general, and thank you so much for all the conversation you guys have been having with us. We truly appreciate it, and hopefully we can all continue to get through this together and you guys feel more inspired to participate in these Octagon tournaments. Pro Play Games is doing a really great job, so if you're looking to, you know, play in one of the upcoming weeklies, I think this deck is a really great choice. Get some reps in, you know, see how powerful it feels, and then kind of go from there. And overall, just keep pushing yourself, keep testing out cards you haven't thought about. Turning the Tide is still underexplored. I don't feel like it's getting enough talk right now in the community. And then same thing with Bergamo and Zamasu Super Combo. People just aren't respecting this. Bergamo is too cheap right now. You should be picking up your copies while you can, because it's just that plus Zamasu Super Combo is just always going to be strong. And then Hit Deadly Vanguard is sub $10, so keep that in mind. Chilled the Cruel is also less than $2. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for everything. Okay, thanks. Bye!